Welcome to Inside Analog Photography Radio Program. I'm your host, Scott Shepard, and of course, the Inside Analog Photography Radio Program is all about traditional process photography. We talk about instant photography. We talk about black and white. We talk about color film. We talk about dry plate, wet plate, you name it, alternate printing processes, everything going on in analog photography. And of course, the Inside Analog Photography Radio Program is brought to you by Fujifilm over at www.fujifilmusa.com/professional, making life more colorful. Our friends at Richard Photo Lab, www.richardphotolab.com, DR5, www.dr5.com, Iger Studios. Check them out, igerstudios.com. And of course, Upstrap at upstrap-pro.com. Our media partners, www.apug.org, the Analog Photography User Group, the community for analog photography. Our photographic philanthropy partner, George Eastman House International Museum of Photography and Film, www.geh.org. Today on Inside Analog Photo, we're going to be joined here with Stephen Schaub with the Phygital Revolution. And today we're going to talk about Stop Your Crying and Start Your Buying. We're talking about some recent announcements here about film availability, just film in general, and how things are going in the analog market, why people need to stock up on certain inventories, and if they're really into shooting things, and just sort of a general chat of what's going on in today's analog environment. Stephen, how you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us, of course, again here on Inside Analog Photo to talk about our special topic is Stop Your Crying and Start Your Buying.
Exactly.
Recently here, of course, and everybody's been alerted that Kodak has discontinued Tri-X 320 in medium format. And also Fuji's been doing some consolidation as well.
Yeah.
So I think I want to talk today about how I think we've relied on vendors to support availability of film, where I think people, if they're really into a certain emulsion, they should stock up on their own, and talking about just this whole thing going on here with different emulsions dropping day by day. So, Stephen, let's start off about this whole thing with 220. Who even cares about 220?
I don't. I mean, really, 10 years ago, I shot a little 220, but the market for that had to be tiny. I mean, I'm surprised it existed this long.
Well, Kodak claimed that it was 5% of their total sales of Tri-X.
Wow.
I mean, that's very little, because I'm sure Tri-X 320 is a small, infantile percentage of their total black and white anyway.
Exactly. And the 400TX, I mean, with the tweaks that they've done on that material, the 320, I know, has fallen away quite a bit.
So let me hear your thoughts on the difference of why you would want to shoot Tri-X 320 versus 400.
To be really honest, I can't think of any reason why Tri-X 320 versus the 400. Years ago, there were reasons, from the retouching capabilities to the lower contrast, the real long toe that 320 had. But the 400TX, it's a great film. It has wonderful reciprocity characteristics. The grain is extremely fine. And I looked at both films a couple years back and decided that I happen to like the 400TX actually better. So for me, the 320 hasn't really been something that's been on my radar for several years, for sure.
Well, really, the 320 was made for a studio film, right?
Exactly.
So, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that certain people are into certain emulsions and they like it. But I guess it really gets to the point here is, if you are shooting medium format, why is everybody whining so much about losing 220 in black and white?
Right.
I mean, who cares? So you get a few more shots per roll, and it's a little bit cheaper, but in the long run, wouldn't you be happy just to have film?
The 220 made sense for a lot of wedding shooters. But for me personally, when I'm shooting 120, I actually like to sort of break it up a little bit, so I'm not putting so many images on one roll. It's a little too scary for me, especially when I'm souping my own stuff. I like to mix it up a little bit that way, so.
Well, the 120 had a thicker base. It's got paper backing the whole way. It had less chance of the film to get scratched. Less chance to get fogged. It just seems to me to be a better solution. I mean, yes, you can squeak out a few more shots per dollar on 220, but really, I don't see it to be that big a deal.
No, I don't either. And I don't understand what the big concern is. I mean, the 320, there are obviously a lot of people who've shot that emulsion for so long and they love it. But the 400TX, if you like the grain structure, it's still there. And it's actually, in my opinion, that I actually like the 400TX a little better. So I'm not heartbroken at all about the 320 going away.
And I really think it comes down to the point of people not supporting emulsions. There's maybe too many emulsions. There's not enough film shooters. There's an issue somewhere, because I guaranteed you, if Kodak, Fuji, and everybody and their mama was making plenty of film and everybody was buying it, nobody would be discontinuing items. People that make money don't stop making money.
Right. Well, I think what you just said actually is where we're at right now. The amount of people who are shooting film, it's not supporting the amount of films that are currently on the market. We currently are living right now, I think, in this sort of wonderful time where film is as good as it's ever going to get. To be honest, even though a lot of films have been discontinued, there's still an awful lot of film available, especially for the fact that photography is changing, digital presence. It's amazing how much film is still available.
Exactly. I mean, Kodak's developing new color. Fuji's got new color. Everybody's got some new stuff going on. So it's not like they've completely dropped and abandoned film. It comes down to the economics of people buying product. And I think the problem is a lot of people that are online that post very verbal comments in forums, they buy 1 or 2 rolls a month and then they wonder how come they have to stop making it.
Right. I think that that's the thing. I mean, I kind of foresee in a very short period here that most of these companies are going to whittle down to the couple of films that they know are their bread and butter films that hit the widest audience. And that's really what we're going to have available. And if people want a particular film, as you and I have talked about in the past, they got to get out and go buy it. And they can't buy 1 roll. They got to be buying 50 rolls. They got to be convincing other people that they should be buying it, because otherwise economics are going to win here, and some of their favorite films are going to go away.
Well, I think with the sustainability of film storage, and we'll talk about this here, but I think if things are done correctly, I think at the age that most people are now that are listening to this program can buy enough black and white, unless they're shooting a very large amount, that they can put themselves into a certain emulsion until they're extremely old.
I agree. Absolutely. 100%.
Now, you shoot a lot. You do a lot of testing. You're always doing all kinds of little tweaky tests and cool stuff. So, I mean, how much medium format black and white are you burning through a week?
Oh, probably 2-3 Pro Packs a week.
Okay, so 10 to 15 rolls a week, so maybe 50 rolls a month.
Yeah, and that'd be on a heavy month, but yeah.
And that's a heavy month, and that's a fair amount of shooting. So consequently, you think you use more than 400 rolls a year?
I'd say we're safe at 400.
So at 400, ideally, you could, in theory, with a decent-sized chest-type freezer, store a lot of film.
Oh, there's no doubt. And if I knew that I was buying film like that, I'd buy it sort of on the same philosophy that I buy meat for my freezer. I'd constantly replenish it until the stuff was gone. Buy it in bulk, store the material that you have, that way you know you've got it, and be rotating through your films. When the film ceases being made, then you make sure you stock out at that time. I've already started this process. I've got 2 freezers that I'm already storing films that are no longer made, Tech-Pan and stuff like that I want for my purposes down the road, or my retirement, depending how Tech-Pan sales continue. I like the fact that I can keep those films for long times, and it's great.
So let's talk about the current availability of black and white, and we keep losing different emulsions. Do you find, and do you think that photographers are being hampered by manufacturers reducing the amount of different emulsions that they're selling?
No, I don't think so yet. I mean, sure, if you happen to love Neopan, if you happen to love 320 Tri-X, you're going to be upset. But at this point, I don't think so. I mean, even Kodachrome that went away or is going away, none of that to me is enough that's really, I think, going to put the pinch on film photographers. But I do think, though, that we all need to open our eyes that we're talking about here and realize that this is only going to continue. And making sure that there are healthy sales in film is important. And picking out that 1 or 2 emulsions that you happen to like and really sort of dedicating yourself to that, I think, is an important thing that we need to start thinking about. But is it really sort of hampering photographers at this point? I don't think so. So I do think that day is coming, though, especially because high-speed films are definitely on the way out.
Well, I mean, that's a problem because of storage and ion bombardment and solar radiation and so forth and so on. I mean, look at the example with TMZ 3200. I mean, they have to store the stuff 5-10 miles underground.
Right.
Otherwise, it gets fogged like boom now.
Right. And the funny part about that film is that it's basically a 1600 speed film if you really are just going to shoot it. I can take T-Max 400, process it in Xtal at 1600, and I've done side-by-sides. The new T-Max 400 and Xtal stock looks better and has finer grain, in my opinion, than the 3200 stuff does. It looks amazing. And I don't have the issues of the storage and the availability. So if you love high-speed films, it's the one thing that it is going to be difficult to store long-term. Because even frozen, the stuff is going to be susceptible to cosmic rays and stuff like that.
I think we have the same issue with color stuff, too. I mean, there's not a lot of color high-speed anymore.
Right, absolutely. And that stuff is going to be much harder to store. I mean, if you like a 100-speed or a 400-speed film, or a slower film than that, you can feel really safe freezing something like that for an indefinite period of time. But the higher speed stuff, that's going to be the one area where finding a film that you can push, like the Tri-X or the T-Max, is going to be really a better solution long term.
I think so. I mean, it almost gets to the point to where if you want to do high-speed color now, you need to get an old camera that uses 3 exposures at once and just shoot red, blue, green on black and white.
Exactly.
Also, I'm thinking it just seems it's going to get to a point that if you're going to go in to get film, it's going to be, what do you want? Color, black and white. And here's color, and here's a roll of black and white. That's all there is.
Right. Well, I think that from the Kodak standpoint, I predict that within 3 to 5 years, at the most, there's going to be T-Max 100, 400, and Tri-X. And that'll be it. I just don't see enough of a need for the other films that they make. And if you think about it, T-Max 100 is a fantastic film. It has very good reciprocity characteristics. It's very fine-grained. It's one of the sharpest 100-speed black and white materials I've ever seen. It's easy to work with. It works with a lot of great developers. So it's a really great, slow 100-speed black and white material. And then if you think about your T-Max 400, you can push it out to 3200. It's got, once again, really good reciprocity characteristics. It's extremely fine-grained. And if you got somebody who just doesn't happen to like the look of tabular grain, no problem, there's 400 TX. So I sort of see those 3 films from Kodak's black and white standpoint really answering everything that they need. And in terms of color, I think it's going to be Ektar. So, I mean, there's your black and white and your color choices. And I see that having a lot of legs to it, is the one thing that does make me happy, is that I don't see those films having a problem. Because I think right now, as we said in the beginning of this talk, there are too many films being made. And it's hard for me to say that because I want there to be a lot of films being made. But there are too many films being made for the amount of photographers out there shooting and buying film. And consolidating down to really the best of the best might be something that's really good for film photography because it would be a lot easier for these companies to support 3 or 4 really great films than it is for them to support 7 or 10 films, and 3 of them make the majority of the money, and the other ones are tough for the company to afford to produce.
So, Stephen, let's address our photographer friends here that aren't really into black and white, and a lot of people that like to shoot C41 color neg. They can drop it off at the corner store. They can have another lab do it. They're not souping their own film. What's your thoughts on shooting color neg and doing a conversion in a hybrid workflow into black and white versus shooting straight black and white negative film?
Well, it's interesting because if your process is to shoot your C41 and get it souped and come home and scan it, unless you've got a fairly good scanner or unless you've got really good sort of scanner technologies and you really know how to use a scanner, it's going to be much easier for you to scan that color neg than it is that black and white material. The black and white material on a good scanner does have a lot of advantages. I mean, it's a much bigger range, all sorts of stuff. But for the average person, yeah, sure, shooting something like the BW400CN or XP2 Super or even just a standard color neg and converting it is a good option. You don't necessarily get the nuanced subtleties of tonality that you get, say, a really great black and white film and processed really immaculately, all the subtle shades of gray. But at the end of the day, most people can't print that anyways. So I think it is a very viable solution for a lot of people.
Well, let's chat about the whole print deal. So, I mean, consequently, unless you're doing traditional darkroom black and white work, most people, I think, at this point are using a hybrid workflow. They're having a lab process their film, black and white or color, and they're getting a roll scan from a Noritsu, an SP2500 Fuji, maybe if they had a Durst roll film scan or something of the sort, they're getting you a decent file back, and you can work with that to like probably 11 by 14. But here's the question. Let's say you have 14, 16 stops of latitude with a great piece of black and white emulsion, and you've done some really cool development, and you've been working on some of these things here that have been pulling out amazing latitude, okay? The problem is unless you really know your stuff, I mean really good, and you have really high-end equipment to print this in a hybrid workflow situation, you're not going to see it anyway.
It's very true. And that's the one thing that I keep repeating over and over again, that photographers make prints. And at the end of the day, I care about the print. So it's true. If you've got a great scan, and if you really know what you're doing in Photoshop, and you've got all this dynamic range, unless you've got that ICC and you're running an extremely calibrated system, you're never going to hit what you really have in terms of that file. And it's not just the printer. And I think this is sort of one of the biggest lies that has sort of been perpetuated out there in the industry, is that, hey, you can go out and buy that high-end Epson wide format printer or HP printer or Canon. It doesn't matter. You can go out and buy that. You can load paper. You can make a good print. But if you want to see the difference that a great print makes, that's where you really start getting into what a master printer does when they're creating ICC profiles. And a lot of the choices they make with regards to crossover curves of light inks to full-strength inks, and the type of dot patterns that are being printed and how many dots can you realistically really print in that square inch. Do you need 2880 or is 1440 fine? And these are the kind of things that the average person doesn't think about. So I'll have people come into our studios, and we've got the Da Vinci and we've got an Epson 99. And I've had other labs who run 99s, who run just the default software drivers and stuff, and they're showing me prints that they're making, and then I show them the same file, and it's night and day. And the difference is that stuff is tweaked. So people need to understand that if you really want to get the most out of that digital hybrid file, you've taken the time to learn to scan and do the Photoshop and do the processing, but the printing end, you can lose all of that if you don't really have it nailed out. And most people don't. And when they realize what goes into making those perfect print environments, what goes into maintaining a printer at the level of calibration that you need to maintain it at, to really be able to get that 100% out of it, it's beyond the time that most people really realistically want to spend.
So let's take this scenario. I mean, you have a traditional background. You went to RIT. I mean, you know what you're talking about. Let's say I'm Joe Photographer. I'm shooting weddings, portraits, kids, pets. I'm just a general commercial photographer trying to make a living, and I'll shoot what I need to, whatever I have to, okay? So let's say I'm going to shoot film, and I'm going to send it to a lab, White House Custom Color, Richard Photo Labs, H&H, Burrell Color Imaging, one of these cats that do traditional digital C-prints.
Yep.
What do you see I'm going to find a difference if I shoot color neg and convert to black and white and have them print it versus shooting traditional black and white, have it brought into a hybrid workflow where they roll scan it, and then they print it in the same machine as they print a digital color file. So really to the machine that's making a print, it doesn't matter. So if I'm supplying a print to a client that's black and white, do I really need to shoot black and white? Or can I just take the color file I shot with my Fuji 400H and convert it to black and white and say, here, Mr. Printer, send me a file so I can put it in my client's album? It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. I mean, no one will ever tell the difference. And that's really the sort of thing that really you're not going to see a difference. They'll look exactly the same. I'm sure there are people out there who may notice a nuance here or there, but for 99.999% of the world, they're the same print. And in that scenario, it makes total sense to just say, I'm going to shoot color and have them convert it. Unless you're really going into the process and using high-end equipment and having experienced operators that are doing the scanning and working with the files and outputting, you're not going to see a difference. And for the example that you gave, the person would be smarter to shoot color neg and have somebody else soup it and do all the stuff than trying to fiddle around with black and white. They'd get much better results with the color neg being scanned and converted.
Oh, of course. I mean, why would you want to shoot chrome or black and white then? It's just a matter of, what do I need to shoot the right kind of negative to get that information into the computer so I can modify it? Here's the thing, too. Let's talk about people that are trying to make any kind of money at all with photography. Their clients want those images for Facebook. They want them for MySpace. They want to put them all over the place. Plus, they want to have these things in a print on the wall, or they're going to do 5x7s or little wallets, whatever the deal is. I mean, if you're making money with this stuff and you want to shoot film and get that analog look and cool stuff, I would think that you just need to say, okay, I'm going to shoot this film, and this is what works, and I use it for everything.
Exactly. And I think that is the smart approach. I mean, with my own work, I'm doing a lot of pinhole work. I like T-Max 100. I like the Fuji Across. And I like the look that I can get with the developers that I'm using and the way they look when they're scanned. It's a different look than I get with, say, other films. But I do think that you're right. You got to find the film and the look that you want and sort of stick with it. And for the average person, I mean, if I'm doing commercial work, 99% of the time I'll shoot color neg and use the workflow that you just mentioned.
Well, think about it. For the stuff that you're doing, there's only a few people in the country that can do that. Yourself, Lenny Iger, Joe Holmes. I mean, there's only a few guys that can pull that off.
Thank you, but you really have to sort of pick your battles. And how far do you really want to push the limits? And I think for 99% of the people out there, the workflow that you described for hybrid is going to make the most sense. Now, if you want to experiment with some of the beautiful black and white materials that are made, you want to sort of start taking it to another level, that's great. But you start to print bigger, you will start to see some of the differences. And if you print on alternative medias, you'll start to see some of the differences. But for the average person, once again, shooting color neg if they want to go into black and white and just converting it and flipping through is a great option.
So your thoughts then, let's look at this scenario. So I'm shooting C41 color neg. Let's say I'm shooting Portra 400 NC or Fuji 400H. Great films, okay?
Yep.
And then I want to do black and white. Is it even worthwhile shooting a black and white C41 film, or am I still better off just staying with my color stuff and doing a conversion? I mean, the C41 black and white films, the BW400CN, the XP2, is beautiful stuff.
Well, the BW400CN has some advantages over all the materials in that depending on how it's processed, it's got a huge range. And the reciprocity characteristics of that material are outrageous. I mean, there's no corrections needed to 2 minutes. And it's one of the reasons why that, in my opinion, is this wonderful sort of 400-speed black and white material. So if you have to worry about reciprocity, then that film would make sense. But if everything you're doing is going to be faster than a second exposure, it doesn't matter at that point either. You might as well shoot the 400H or a 400-speed portrait film because the difference is going to be so subtle. The difference really comes into if you're looking maybe for sort of a larger latitude or if you're looking for better reciprocity characteristics. The XP2 has an interesting sort of contrast to it. It's very open in a way that the BW400CN is not. But a lot of that can also be tweaked in the computer. If you're shooting stuff faster than a second, I would say the differences would be so negligible you might as well stick with your portrait film or whatever. But if you're doing stuff that's longer, then the other films do make sense. But that's definitely for a little more specific needs.
So in your opinion, and from what you know and people that you deal with and talk to and so forth, let's take the whole body of people shooting film, all analog photographers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
How much percentage-wise do you think of people that are shooting analog products today are in a hybrid environment? Because think of all the people that go to Walgreens and Costco.
I'm going to say everybody. It's a hybrid environment at this point, with the exception of people doing silver chloride contact prints. But even they're in a hybrid environment because they're posting their stuff on the web. So at some point, they're scanning that puppy and they're hybrid. Basically, at this point, I don't think it's possible, unless you want to completely make silver chloride prints, you're not going to post anything on the internet. Everybody at one degree or another is working in a hybrid workflow. If you take your prints to Walgreens or to a 1-hour lab to make the prints, they're not optical prints anymore. Everything's scanned. So all the prints are being made from the scanned piece of film, as opposed to the way it was 15 years ago, where it actually was an optical print from that neg. So as a result, almost everybody to one degree or another is working hybrid. They might not realize it, but they are.
So, I mean, it's just interesting to see. And the reason that I brought these topics up is let's move back here, okay? Fuji discontinues Neopan 400. They've consolidated Neopan 100 in 5-packs that I think is great. Matter of fact, I think they should just sell it in 100 packs. Stop your crying and start your buying.
That's right.
Save your pennies up and buy 100 rolls of film, and then it'll be with you.
That's right. It'll be a Friday afternoon, and you go, oh, crap, I've got one roll of film.
You're better off buying in bulk. You're going to get a better price.
That's right.
And if you have an addiction to a certain emulsion, you can't go down to the drugstore anymore and buy black and white film hardly unless you want some Kodak 400C. Maybe you need to stock the stuff.
Well, living in Vermont, I'm sort of in the middle of nowhere, or I don't know, maybe I'm in the center of everything, but I'm probably more likely in the middle of nowhere. So everything that I get photographically has to be shipped in. So when I buy film, I never buy 5 rolls. 50 rolls is a minimum order, only because I don't want to have to pay the shipping. And if it's a Tuesday or a Friday, I can't run anywhere closer than 2 hours to get 120 black and white film if I need it. I've always had the policy of keeping lots of film in stock. And also, I buy primarily the film that I know I'm going to shoot. I have in my fridge downstairs a lot of film from a lot of different companies. And I'm always buying a dozen or half dozen rolls of this or a dozen rolls of that for testing purposes. But the vast majority of what I buy and store is my real bread and butter film, the stuff that I love.
Exactly. So I think the point is, if there's an emulsion that people really love, you need to buy it and store it. 120, of course, is in foil packets, so it's all sealed and happy. So really, you can just pull them out of the cardboard boxes, throw the stuff into huge Ziplocs, and drop it in the freezer.
Yeah, I double Ziploc them. I don't know why, but I've always done that. I double freezer Ziploc the suckers. I mark on the Ziploc bag the date that it went in and all that kind of stuff. And I always have the same emulsion in a bag. I never mix emulsions from bag to bag. So to be honest, nowadays, the quality of the processing of the making of the film is so good that the variability, especially in a hybrid workflow from one emulsion to another, is so minimal that I really don't pay attention to it as much. But just out of habit, I break the freezer bags up, buy emulsion, I date when it was frozen, and I throw it up there. If I know I'm going to need that film, I pull it down, put it in the refrigerator for a couple of days, then I let it sit out for a couple of hours, and I'm ready to go.
So that's the bottom line is if you're really concerned about a specific emulsion, either be color, because I think we're going to see more color go away here soon, too.
Absolutely. If you love a film, you need to go out and start to buy it in bigger bulk. And buying 2 rolls a week doesn't make sense. Go out and buy that 10 rolls at a time and stick it in your fridge. Or buy 20 or 30 rolls and stick it in your fridge. I think it's up to all film photographers to realize that the companies who are making these films are only going to make these films as long as it's financially viable for them to do it. And there are honest people at Fuji and at Kodak and at Ilford and all these companies who love film-based photography. But at the end of the day, they're in business as a company, and if they're not selling the stuff, they're not going to be making it. And it's our responsibility, if you want film photography to exist, you have to go out and buy film. And one roll is not going to work. If you think about it, I'd kind of like to know, I wish the companies would say, how much film, realistically speaking, in a year do you want to move in order to feel comfortable staying in the film business? I'd be kind of curious if there is actually a number that they have floating around in their head. I'm sure there's a number, but how much film do the number crunchers want to see being sold when they sit there and lay out their paperwork in order to feel that the film sales are viable? I'd be curious to kind of know what that sort of is, because I think that's sort of the way that we need to be thinking about it. If we want our industry to survive, we need to be buying X amount of film a year, or it's not going to happen.
Definitely true there, and I think you just got to step up to the pay window, and if you can't afford to buy 100 rolls at a time, well, when you order stuff from your favorite supplier, order a couple extra here, pretty soon you'll have some in stock if the stuff goes away. And I think that's the biggest thing that's so cool about traditional black and white silver is you can pick pretty much any emulsion that's out there, and you can adjust it with so many different ways with development that you can make it look almost any way you want.
Exactly. And if you're working in the hybrid workflow, I mean, once you've scanned that film and you've got all that wonderful dynamic range, and you've got all that wonderful dimensional quality that you get from a really great film scan, you can do anything you want at that point to that material. And it has so much more, in my opinion, life and so much more dimension than what I see at digital capture, especially in terms of skin tone in really low shadow ranges. I mean, if you look at great black and white film or really great C41 scans, look in that low range and look at the beautiful tonality, you don't see that in digital capture. It always looks crunchy. It never has quite the clean, sort of low range that I see out of a really great film scan. And that's one of the reasons why I love film. I mean, I went from large format to digital and then back to film many years ago because no matter how much money I spent, it didn't seem like I could come close to the quality that I was already getting, especially in terms of film scans.
Very true. So let's talk about what you've been up to here lately. You've been working on doing a lot of instant coffee development that is coming out with some very surprising results.
It's something that's very interesting to me, that the whole caffeinol C process, there's been a lot of people experimenting with it. I talk about on the website how I really feel that caffeinol and caffeinol C are really a community-developed developer, in that a lot of people have had their fingers in the pot here, making this happen and working with it and tweaking with it over the years. And there's been a few things that have held it back. Edge density and negatives, what is the best processing times, and what is the best way to process it. And I've decided to take the last couple of months and really go through it and just run every test possible. I've gone through easily 80 to 100 rolls of 120 testing this material. I have just about bought my local supermarket out of Folgers Instant Crystals. I go over and buy like 5-6 containers at a time, which is horrible because I can't stand instant coffee. At least I found a use for instant coffee because you don't want to drink the stuff, but I guess you can process film with it. So it's a wonderful process. And I read a lot of people online who were talking mistakenly that caffeinol and caffeinol C or Folgenol was not a good process for scanning. And I have actually found through my testing that to be completely the opposite, that a lot of the wonderful things that I like about Diafine Developer, a lot of the wonderful things that I like about Xtol and that I like about PMK, all happen to be in caffeinol and caffeinol C. And I'm more interested in the caffeinol C. And on top of that, it's very cost-effective. I mean, extremely cost-effective. And from an environmental standpoint, it's not bad for me, and it's not bad for the environment. So really, there's not much not to like about the process, except it smells.
Well, it couldn't smell too bad, right? It's fresh Folgers crystals.
Something happens when you mix the crystals with the washing soda.
Yeah.
It kind of smells like fish grease that's been in a pan for a couple days. I mean, it isn't bad. To be honest, I've been smelling it so much, I'm actually starting to like it. But it's a fascinating process. I'm in the process of writing this book right now, The Photographer's Coffee Break. It's going to come out in about 2 months. One of the whole purposes of the book, and this is part of my idea, was to make a book that sort of emphasizes the idea of experimentation, that emphasizes the idea that you always need to be trying new things. So in the book, I'm going to be outlining literally a stripped-down zone system method of metering that I feel is appropriate for this process. I'm going to outline in excruciating detail, because what I've found is that the way somebody agitates a tank compared to the way that I do it does make a big difference. So I'm going to have more photographs in this book than I'm sort of wanting to think about right now, illustrating every single aspect of how to process the film. But then I'm also going to get into the hybrid workflow, and I'm going to talk about if you want to scan film, here are some really simple do's and don'ts that will get you a better quality scan no matter what scanner you use every time. And when you're in Photoshop, when you're working with this film, here's techniques that you might want to consider for controlling local and global contrast that'll make it when you're looking at these really low contrast, very flat Caffenol-C processed films. Here's how you pull out that information and make it something that is visually amazing and beautiful on your screen. While it talks about the photographer's coffee break, it's really a book about the hybrid workflow. And it's really a book about encouraging photographers to experiment.
And I think that's the biggest thing, to keep growing and adopt the hybrid workflow. I mean, it's great to be able to be 100% analog, and it's cool to be able to do black and white and soup it and optically enlarge it and make all these fun prints. But I think for anything that's a commercial basis where you're trying to make money off your photography, unless you're doing one-off special gallery work, these type of things need to be investigated, and people need to expand their horizons and learn about this and accept the tools that are in front of them. And you can do hybrid and use all the great tools of digital and all the cool software from Nick and Photoshop and all these other people, but you can still capture analog with your great gear and have that unique film look to it and still do beautiful work.
Well, you can work with those unique camera systems and stuff that are never going to be available in a digital format, from really wide panoramic cameras to pinhole cameras and zone plate systems and stuff that's funky and unique with curved film planes. There's all sorts of amazing stuff, and the hybrid workflow is really about all that. I was thinking about how right now we're really in an age that very much mirrors 100 years ago in photography. And if you think back to the first part of the 1900s, there was this wonderful experimentation that was going on. You had your pictorialists, your modernists were coming in, and if you go to a place like the Eastman House and you just walk through the archive collection rooms, look at the variety of different photographic processes hanging on the wall. From albumin to salt to zeolite to carbro to platinum. There is just so many unbelievable processes on the wall. I look at the hybrid workflow and I'm like, you know what, it's kind of like that again. Right now, we live at this magical moment where all these processes, all these interesting making digital negatives and going back to analog, scanning and going out to alternative papers or printing on traditional papers. There's just so many things available that it's like photography's become really interesting again. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about film not going away and about photographers having choice of all these different processes in these different mediums, because it's really what makes photography fun. Is to me, the whole experimentation and being able to try different processes is one of the things that I love about being a photographer.
So true, and as long as you're capturing photons on silver, it's great. Yes, you can do some great digital capture if you want to spend 40 or 60K. And I have to admit, a lot of the DSLRs that are shooting ISO 12,800 plus are pretty cool. They still don't have the same look, though.
I show people side-by-side examples of a portrait made with a Hasselblad, nice film, and a great scan. And then I'll show you the exact same image made with any digital camera system until you get to the extreme high end. And when you start looking at things like the way the skin looks, it's not a comparison. The film is just much more round. It's much more dimensional. There's something just truly beautiful about that. And it's not that I feel the digital isn't good. It's just different. And that's what I like about this right now, is that we can have both. And I think that's so great. As I said, it's one of the reasons why I'm not anti-digital. If anything, I'm a huge proponent of digital. But I'm an equally huge proponent of film. I'm selfish. I want everything.
There you go. Now, when your pinhole camera gets a digital sensor in it, then we'll have to worry.
Exactly.
Stephen, how do we get more information on the digital revolution, all the stuff you're doing, Indian Hill Image Works, your prints, your art, and everything else that's going on?
Well, the best way is you can go to digitalrevolution.com. From there, you can look at the Caffenol process. You can also go to caffenol.com. It'll take you directly to the page where we're doing the work on the books, and I'm going to be publishing times and all sorts of stuff. Indian Hill Image Works, which is sort of the larger umbrella business of everything, is where we do our printing and scanning services. We offer photographic instruction one-on-one time here at the studios. Check it out.
It's great stuff, and I look forward to chatting with you. I know you're getting ready to go off to New Orleans for Mardi Gras fun and some great pinhole photography. And then, of course, we're going to have, I'm assuming, some cool announcements at PMA this year that we'll chat about here in the next couple of weeks. So I really appreciate your time today, and I think you're on the same deal that people need to stop their crying and start their buying and just enjoy what they have now. And if they really want to enjoy what they have, they should buy a lot of it while they can.
Amen.
There you go. Thank you so much, Stephen. Have a great trip in fabulous New Orleans, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks. Take care.
Well, there you go. Stephen Schaub, the leader of the digital revolution, and stop your crying and start your buying. You should really think about your analog photography, and if there's really an emulsion that you feel very connected to, that you feel that might be in danger of being obsoleted, you need to stock up and store the goods. So there you go. You can find out more information about Stephen over at his website, everything else going on, and of course, more things coming up here with Inside Analog Photo. The Inside Analog Photography radio program has been brought to you by Fujifilm, making life more colorful over at www.fujifilmusa.com. Our friends at Richard Photo Lab at richardphotolab.com. DR5 over at www.dr5.com. Iger Studios over at igerstudios.com. Upstrap at upstrap-pro.com. And of course, our media partners, APUG, the Analog Photography User Group, over at www.apug.org. Our photography philanthropy partners, George Eastman House International Museum of Photography and Film, over at www.geh.org. I've been your host, Scott Chipper, here on Inside Analog Photography Radio. We'll be back next week with more great analog photography.